In today's video, we're going to be looking at the Neptune EA by Mr. Kalinsky Jillian. So this bot looks interesting to me because reading the sales page, it's saying a lot of good things. And effectively it's saying that this is a gold trading bot on the M30, but each position has a stop loss, a take profit, single trade, no grid, no martingale, and that's pretty interesting actually. And you don't often see many real bots in the MQL5 marketplace, so at least when something is claiming to have this kind of style of more like straightforward, lower risk system, it's cool to kind of take a look and see how it's trading. And here what he's saying is that over 2025, it has a 155% return with an 85% win rate with a super low drawdown. So that's obviously, these statistics are incredible. So we probably would have to dive in a bit more in detail to see why exactly this is happening. Like an 11.19 Sharpe ratio is crazy high. So we'd have to kind of see a little bit more in depth why exactly it's trading in such a way. So here, like it's saying that it's using trend filters, or it uses trend structure, trend strength validation, all of which is really good because particularly with gold, as it's a very trending asset, trying to fight that trend can be pretty hard. Here as well, too, we can see that it's using a trailing stop loss, so that as price moves in your favor, it's able to scalp a quick profit. This works really well with gold, so a lot of these features so far make sense to me, like trend filter, trailing stop loss. Each position has a take profit or a trailing stop loss and a stop loss. There's no doubling down on losers, also really solid too. And yeah, apparently they're also looking at putting in place a few different things in the roadmap. So apparently they're looking to also implement a sell mode. Right now, in my quick backtest of this bot, it's only buying, and that's partially probably why we're seeing such crazy high returns here, because they're only buying when gold was in a massive uptrend. So clearly, like, gold was just trending like crazy to the upside. So any system that bought gold would look ridiculous in backtesting. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it also means that if the regime changes, you can't possibly expect that behavior for all time, right? So here, the fact that they're looking at putting in a sell is a really good sign because it shows that they're mindful of this and they're trying to make a two-way position. They're also seeing here that you need to put $2,000 or $1,000 to be able to actually only risk 2% per trade. This makes sense because even like with gold at such a massive value right now, the price of gold being so high, even 0.01 lots of gold is pretty big. So if you have a fairly large stop loss and you're trading with 0.01 lots, it's hard to risk only 2%. You need to actually have a few $1,000s in the account. So that also makes sense that they're actually mentioning that. So far, the reviews look pretty solid too. And yeah, this indeed looks like a real equity curve, despite being a little bit very rosy. But I think you can probably attribute that to the current price action on gold and just how massively trending it is. So if we look at it here, it looks to be very much a trend following system. Let me look at the actual time to see when they're entering. If we look at ins, there's no defined. Okay, it's usually entering on the hour, so I would venture that it's probably running off of maybe H1 or sometimes 110, maybe on different candles, but it does look to be entering with a time-based trigger, just given the fact that they're always on a 10-minute increment, and it's holding for an extended period of time. So this is in some ways similar to our golden longbow bot, where it's just holding for very long periods of time. I'm trying to find an example of when it lost, and here it is. Okay, so occasionally, like each position would have a stop loss in it. So it's more like a long swing style system. If we look at the inputs, we can see that. Okay, so currently by default it only allows buys. Let's take a look now to see what it looks like if you allow buys and sells. So there's a filter, there's a spread filter, there's different exits. It runs on the M30. And there's a few different day of the week filters, but none of them have been turned on, which is also a good sign. Okay, so this looks a bit more realistic when we allow buys and sells. So far from what I'm seeing, this looks like a real system. There is definitely a strategy here. I do think like the performance long only is a bit too rosy, just given the market environment. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's manipulated. It just means that this style of system would have done incredibly well in recent years. This backtest here, which is the bidirectional one, looks a little bit more legit. Why they're entering, I think it's more of a time-based entry, believe it or not. If we look at the actual trades once it finishes loading too, I would venture that they are trailing it by a fairly sizable amount, and it is indeed more of this swing style system. So it looks like a real strategy for sure. It just comes down to seeing how the development process went. Was it overfit? Is there perhaps a little bit of bias which was introduced? So if we go and kind of look at this equity curve, this all of a sudden looks a lot more legitimate. So this is a long and short one. There's some stagnation periods. It's going up slowly but surely. This looks a lot better to me. And here we can see that they are indeed going, they're winning longs 84% of the time. They're winning shorts 53% of the time. So the total win rate is around 72% with an inverted risk reward. But the average loss is bigger than the average winner. Okay, cool. So this makes a lot more sense. If we see these statistics, it looks a bit more legitimate to me. And this kind of helps to reinforce that there probably is a real strategy here. The only kind of thing that we have to assess is whether or not this thing would still make money in the event that gold just so happened to stop trending, because that's always kind of a challenging thing. Oh wow, they actually do have a TP on it too, which is interesting enough. And they do hold often for a good chunk of the day. Okay, let's keep fast forwarding here. Yep, sometimes they use a trailing stop loss as well. And they're really just riding that trend. So yes, there does definitely appear to be a real strategy here. Trend following on gold, which can work really well. I've developed bots like this. It's a good system. It works well. If you also run it long and short, it still makes money, which is also a good sign. So it's not just purely overfitting to a really bullish bit of price action. So overall, this looks like a real bot. Looks pretty good. I can't ascertain as much in depth about the exact strategy, but I would think that there is a good chance it would be robust long term, just given how it's performing in both a long and short environment, and the actual strategy seems to make a fair amount of sense to me. Most likely, you'd want to kind of see how they developed it, like if they're using a lot of trend filters, were they robust when actually doing so? But overall, it's looking pretty solid. I think there's definitely something here, and it's certainly a real strategy. So guys, if you buy this one, let me know, and I'd be curious to hear your feedback. Cheers.